For the fourth day of Tishrei, September 26th, and it is on page 68 in the Chayenu. So I read a little bit in the Steinsaltz Tanya, just to give you a little background of this epistle 20, the 20th letter. First of all, it's different than the other letters. The other letters were letters. They were communal letters. This actually is a unique, just to understand, this whole fourth section of Tanya is meant to supplement the ideas that are talked about in the first two sections, the famous one, the Kuti Amorim, and the second one, Sharich V'Munah. This is a later addendum that the sons of the Alter Rebbe, thank you, published this extra material that is, ideas that supplement it. A lot of them were letters. This is actually, I did not know this. This treatise was written 1 week before the Alter Rebbe passed away, when he was on the run from Napoleon in the village of Piena. Wow. Which is very cool.
How do you know that? I mean, this is documented.
Yeah, it's documented, yeah. We have sources. They bring. Wow. So that's number one. Number two, the content is different than the rest of the letters that we were learning, because there the letters are written to people. So there's a certain having the audience in mind. This letter is much more the Alter Rebbe's own thoughts. Therefore, the language is a little harder to decipher because it's written kind of personal, notes or something like that. And but one more interesting point about the specialty of this letter is that it's going to talk about one of the deepest themes in Hasidism, upon which hundreds of the Alter Rebbe's Maimarim treatises are referencing, and that is the supremacy of God being found in this low world. Right? We say there's many worlds, but there's something very, very special, unique, even greater than all the angelic supernal realms, is this physical world where God hides himself and is a very physical world, but there's something that trumps all the other worlds, and we're going to learn what it is.
Wow.
Okay, let's get to it.
That's our world.
Our world.
Just make it.
So I knew you'd like that, Alan, right? Our world is pretty good.
In the body, God looks up to us, and if we're on a pedestal, and if we don't behave, he's going to knock us off the pedestal.
Yeah. I'm sorry. It's a different angle. I'm saying it's just that the handicap of the physical world, where we don't see Hashem, and we're very tempted by a lot of distractions and physical distractions and all that. There's something very, very important that cannot be found in any other reality other than this physical world. Let's get to it. Okay. It says, he quotes from the Zohar. He starts off with a quote of the Zohar. Famous quote. Ihu v'chayohi chad, ihu v'garmoyi chad b'hoin. He, God, and his life forces are one. He and his attributes are one with them. In them. Okay.
It says causation.
Causation. So I'm looking in the Steinsaltz. Let me go. I mean, attributes, causations. It means the term means literally what it means. The organs. So God and His life-giving emanations. You know when they're doing like a hyphen word that they don't have a really good translation. They gotta, splice together a couple of things. So, he and his life-giving emanations, right? Which is and Garmoyi, he's also one with his Garmoyi, literally his organs. What does that mean?
How can God have organs?
Obviously, it's not literal. So we have to. You're right. You have to unpack it. So that is in the 10 Sfirot of Atzilut. We talked many times. We referenced the idea. The big Kabbalistic breakthrough idea that there's this bridge between the infinite unknowableness of God and the finite world. The bridge is the 10 sephiros, right?
Mhm.
The 10 sefirot primarily exist in their most primal form in the world of Atzilut. Atzilut is the world which is a world that knows that it's emanated into existence by God. It's a very aware world of God. And then it goes downhill from there, less awareness. Till we get to us where the default is no awareness.
Abyssal.
Or handicapped awareness, whatever you call it.
Now, this is coming from the word Eitzel, right?
Eitzel, yes. It also, Eitzel means adjacent. It also means emanate. It says, Vayatzel Moshe. Moshe emanated some of his prophetic spirit onto the 70 elders. So it's emanated. It's the same thing because it's adjacent to God, or it's very close. It feels adjacent to God. That's because it's clearly emanated from God. That's as much as I know. More than that, you have to go to a higher paid rabbi. Okay. His life-giving emanations is the light. So what does it mean? So now we're translating this famous quote of the Zohar. His life-giving emanations, it refers to the lights of the 10 sefirot. There's lights, right? These bridges, which are essentially God's attributes, there are two parts. There's the light of it, the, I'd say, let's say chesed, the light of kindness. And then there's the vessel that puts parameters to this light. I really wish I read more in advance. Just so you know, elsewhere, the life force, it's different. It's not exactly like, it's not like in the cosmic soul and body, because the soul it has parameters to begin with, and the body is very constrained. Rather, in the 10 sefirot, these things are very, very abstract, and they're not nearly as constrained in the typical, like, say, life force in organ. That's yeah. Okay. Anyway, moving along. Just to give a couple, I'm just, we're trying to stuff in 10,000 hours into 30 minutes. But light and vessels, I'm just reading for the Steinsaltz, light and vessels are the two most basic components of reality in all worlds. From the lowest realm to the highest world of Atzilot, there's no being that is not comprised of these two constituents. The life force is the light, which reveals its source, but is not itself a distinct entity. So light is always reflecting on a source of light. Vessels give the light a way to function in some sort of form. The lights are unbounded, and therefore they're one that we can understand. The light is, you could say, light is very, divine light is very ethereal, abstract. It's not bounded. So that's understanding. So the novelty here is that the vessels of these, the buckets that hold these lights, the kalim, the vessel, they're also unlimited. How? Let's see. They're all divinity, which is not the case in the lower worlds of Bria Tziyasiyah. The unity of the lower worlds, the created worlds, are not the same unity as the light and vessel of the higher world. There's more in the lower created worlds. There's a greater sense of self. I mean, different gradations, but like you can view yourself as a servant of God, yet you're still a being. You're an instrument of God. You're still independence. Okay, now to understand this, let's go. It needs to be clearly understood how the Ein Sof is one with his causations, with the vessels. For the vessels must be limited and finite, as is stated in Eitz Chaim, a book on Kabbalah. So how could we say that the vessels that house the light is also one with God. Don't they? Aren't they by definition vessels means particularism, which means parameters, which means some type of finitude. Anyways,
This goes back to the basic Hasidic insight, right? The unity, God is everywhere and everywhere.
right. And so, but how can we say God is unified in a rock or in something? I mean, so that's our question.
We've
That's,
already addressed that from different perspectives, right? I mean,
yeah, we probably
it keeps coming up in many ways.
Yes,
Many
yes, yes. But this is, as I said, this is written a week before he passed away.
Yes,
He's giving he's like going right to
this
the,
is a high level of theory.
exactly. So let's get to it. However, the intention that's stating the Ein Sof, the infinite, is one with his Kalim on page 70, is to say they are divinity with regard to creating something out of nothing, just as the Ein Sof is capable of doing. In other words, yes, of course, the vessel is limited and therefore it cannot be truly one with God's divinity, but it has godly manifestation in its ability that it can create.
Finitude. Its very finitude is a manifestation of its infinitude.
Well, here we're
In a
talking
way,
about,
it's
yeah, we can get to there is that angle, but I think here it's saying, again, I didn't prepare too much, but the way I'm understanding is that touche that it is finite, therefore it cannot be unified with the infinite.
Right.
It can't be the same. It's different.
Right.
But because it can create something from nothing, something can come out of it,
not
that exhibits an infinite type of,
because it is created. You
no.
He just said they can create.
Noted by the Rebbe. Look at footnote 46 on page 70. This is not, the Rebbe notes, this is not to say the Ein Sof, infinite one, is one with his vessels, the Kalim of the Sefirot. Rather, they unite in an action that can only come about through the Ein Sof or through uniting with the Ein Sof, with action coming about by the Ein Sof and through the vessels, the Kalim. You understand? It unifies for a godly function of creation.
Right.
But in of itself, it
It's
sounds like
unified in the sense that it is created by,
it's a channel
and it's a
to
channel
channel
of, and
God's
it's a
infinite
vehicle
creative
for-
power.
Right. Right.
In of itself, though, it is limited,
Right.
which is bad. And I mean, in our sense, is not.
But it
One.
that's by the design.
But yeah.
It's unlimited. Right.
In other, its function
Design and
is
connection
infinite.
to, right.
Its self, it might be fine, but its function, it's right. Its function would be
It's a
infinite.
limited function, right? Just like the organ of body, human body has a limited function, right?
I think it's the opposite. I think it's saying that it's, again, I could be wrong. I'm just reading in the sense. It's finite. Disconnect from infinite.
Right.
How are you saying it's one with the infinite?
Yeah, that's how we're saying it.
The answer is, you're right. In of itself, it has a certain finiteness, disconnected, but its utilization that it can create, in other words, it can channel the infinite through its finitude
Right.
in a certain way, that's infinite. It
Can or
unites.
does inherently. Can both.
It does. Yeah, it's made to do that. It's made. It's
It's
intrinsic.
made to do that. And so, okay. All right.
Let's see this. And not merely by way of an evolution from Ela to Allah, from cause to effect. As links in a causal progression, wherein a being, the ulul or effect, evolves of itself from its Ela or cause. As for the statement of Rabbi Moshe Cordovero, okay, so there's a concept called Ela v'Olul. God willing, I'll read this over Shabbos and I'll have a little more clarity. But the basic idea is Ela v'Olul is a idea that, let's say I have an idea, I ponder something, I think about how much I like pomegranates. And then I develop an emotion. I have a craving for a pomegranate. So the craving is really somewhere there in the intellectual pondering. The cause is the pondering, the effect, the outcome is the emotion. Now, we're saying creation does not work like that. Aristotle, he, extent of my Aristotelian knowledge, held that everything is ilav Allah, cause and effect. So everything started out, let's say, in there had to be always a world. There's no Big Bang by Aristotle because no, but there's no Big Bang. There's no origination. There's no nothing into something. So it must have been forever. You can refine something more and more and more, but you have to have a starting point. So there must have always been a starting point. Judaism says no. There's a beginning. There's nothing, and there was something. There was tayu v'vayu. There's emptiness, and then God created something from nothing. So we hold in Judaism everything's something from nothing. And how did that happen? How did something from nothing happen? Well, you could say, well, God just does whatever He wants, but there's a mechanism. The mechanism is called the 10 Sfirot. The 10 Sfirot take the abstract, infinite, unbounded light, and which is where there's nothing else, and then they kind of make something else. They channel that room for nothing else into something separate, autonomous. It feels autonomous.
It's a good way to say it.
Is there an acknowledgement of Hasidism that the 10 Sfirot, this whole scheme, is our knowledge is limited and that it's not, or are we pretending to know God's knowledge here? I mean, why is
What is Kabbalah? What does the word Kabbalah mean?
Receiving. Acceptance.
Received. Kabbalah means
It's
received.
translated into something we can, even that is translated into kind of.
This is esoteric wisdom.
Reduced, it's symptom, kind of contracted into something we can understand. That's
100%.
the best we can do.
Yeah.
For our understanding.
But there's no question, Kabbalah also came about through revelation. The belief is Kabbalah is received.
Right.
While it started, let's say our earliest, not even our earliest sort, it talks to the Gemara about Kabbalah. I mean, not exactly our way, but
everything is like a teaching. Okay.
Yeah. So it's revelations. How do we know anything? How do we know God likes tefillin
Right.
and doesn't like milk and meat? I mean,
You don't get into question of absolute knowledge.
I think the Kabbalists use their noggin pretty well, and they give a very good logical explanation. I mean, this is a very trendy, not just now, the big intellectuals in the pre-America, Kabbalah was very popular in the Renaissance era.
Right.
There's something, it's something very, it's not just like, this is what, we believe as Native Americans, and this is our belief, and that's what it is. No, it's a very intricate philosophy. But the beginning of it, or at least let's say the rocks of it, are going back to Rashbi and then back to Moses.
It's based on the Torah, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Rabbi Gordon says.
Oh, invoking Rabbi Gordon. Let's go.
Rabbi Gordon says you can't understand Ein Sof. You're never going to get to endless. Hashem is infinite. You're never going to understand infinite. You're never going to get to it. But even infinity has a beginning. And the beginning is Torah, Halacha, understanding the 1 and 2 and 3, right? So you get to the infinite, forget about the endless. The beginning is understanding the Torah and the Halacha that you can understand. That's understanding Hashem.
By the way, I wanted to say something yesterday. Thank you very much. He just said that infinite is endless, but God gives entry points for it. Interesting, Alan, you mentioned yesterday about how could, the Altar's question was your question of how could the Arizal talk about levels that are higher than Moshe experienced, right? And
I figured out an answer for that too.
So I want to point out,
his soul was in heaven when Moshe came up, and Arizal could have experienced the whole thing. But down.
I have a simpler answer. I have a less esoteric answer. And the Rabbi notes it, and you really should get the Steinsaltz Tanya because it's going to give you a lot more to chew on. But the basic idea is, who says Moshe didn't also, had the Kabbalists know the highest levels, a mixture of basic, ideas that they toiled their whole life to, understand better and better and better, right? We're not saying Moshe didn't also have that intellectual knowledge. We're just saying the prophetic experience, which is very different than intellectual knowledge, right, is a very different thing. Moshe's experience, was up to a certain level. Moshe's intellectual experience, he might have known up to what the Arizal knew. It's not a contradiction. Anyway, it was highlighted. All right, moving along. So he's saying, as to the statement of Moshe Cordovero, that creative development in the sphere takes place by way of Ilah and Alol, and so it is stated in the sacred Zohar.
Mhm.
This refers to the evolution of the Sphirot within the Sphirot themselves, whereby one sphere evolves from another, Bina from Chachma, with respect to the Kalim, which are termed Blima, without anything in Sefer Yetzirah, because they are not in the category of a substance, nor of a nature that is apprehensible to created beings. Like the Ein Sof, whom thought cannot grasp at all. So too,
He's talking about the Sefirot here.
I think the Sefirot are called, without anything, tangible and comprehensible. Meaning we're saying they're not Ilav Al. Ilav Al is a little easier to wrap your head around. Cause, effect, there has to be a beginning point. We're saying the vessels of the Sefirot are actually formless in many ways. They're really not tangible, like you think of a vessel.
Right.
Since the sphere are not apprehensible substance, they can evolve from one to another as Ilah and Alol, rather than being
In other words, we can use the vocabulary of cause and effect while we're analyzing the Sefirot, but that doesn't mean that there's some basic cause and effect overlying the whole scheme, because it's still a miraculous thing.
right. So the Sefirot, cause and effect is within, when you have a starting, they say the joke, a bunch of scientists wanted to challenge God. They wanted to play God. So they took God to a showdown. You created man, we're going to create man. We've used the cloning technology, we're going to create man. So they took some dust, they start forming man, like it says in Genesis. And a heavenly voice booms out, "Get your own dust." Meaning,
Good one.
in other words,
This is a good one.
the Sefirot, once they have some sort of framework, they can evolve. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking the fact that the Sefirot they channel infinite creative power. As is written, you see this in the verse, "And my face shall not be seen," right? God told Moses, "My face shall not be seen.
No man, right?
No man shall see my face." The prophecy and apprehension of Moshe, our masterpiece be to him, related to the upper rank of Netzach of Zer. We said last letter that Moshe had there was a ceiling of Moshe's prophecy. And in the evolution, the Olul again means the effect. The effect is encompassed by its cause, its Ilah, as in a state of utter self-nullification in relation to it, just as a ray of the sun loses any independent identity and is essentially non-existent when it is within the sun.
Let's go back. What is the Zeron pen again?
Zeranpin is just code word for the 7 midos, the 7
Seven
chesed words, right? 7 emotional, yeah.
And the higher ones are Zeer.
Chabad is mochin.
But they're called Zeer something else. Arich? No.
No, that's Arachan Pin. I don't know. This is
All right, so those
Not
are
sure.
the 7 lower ones. Okay.
yeah. Zeranpin is a. It's funny when you learn yeshiva, you reference words you don't really understand. So you just translate them to move on.
Right.
If you get into the nitty gritty, like what are you saying? Probably happens in all educational facilities. You say terms, you learn to like how to use the term. But it doesn't mean you really appreciate the term. So I'm guilty of that.
Unless you're studying linguistics.
Right. So in the evolution of the Sefirot from the other, the Olul is encompassed by its Ilah and is in a state of nullification. When it's within the sun, past by its Ela and is in a state of utter nullification in relation to it, as a ray of the sun loses identity within the orb of the sun. Basically, for example, if I tell you that you have an emotion, or I don't know, I think emotion is an example, that's made about by perception, by an idea, right?
You said something, we feel it?
You think of something and then you feel it, right? You think of it, perception and you have emotion. The emotion is very crass compared to the way it is in the idea level of it. And it must exist there. It came from the idea, let's say, but it's totally, when you're still in idea mode, you're still thinking of it. The emotion is somewhere there. It's just not distinct. So it's basically nullified. Something like that. I think there's some qualifications to emotions from perception because emotions do have their own source. I don't know. For example, if I say 2 apples of 2 apples equals 4 apples, that's all subsumed in the idea of 2 plus 2 is 4, which is subsumed the idea of addition. And, the apples, the specific example is really nothing of its own. It's like nothing compared to the overarching principle. I don't know, I got to read more of this. This is a big deal. In other words, it's impossible to create what we call a yesh. Yesh is a big term. Yesh means an autonomous being that has the sense of existent, independent of its source, through the process of Ela and Alo. Okay. Thus, even numerous contractions, if you were to take, let's say, God's infinite light, you put a filter and another filter and another filter, another, it's still going to stay light. It's not going to become a rock. By way of an evolution from the spirituality of abstract intelligences, not even, right? If I think about a rock and I start thinking of more and more detail, I'm like forming the rock with all it's like, is it going to make a rock? No, because you can't bridge a chasm with just, dumbing it down. There's a certain point, there's a jump from one way of existence to entirely different existence. That's what we call something from nothing, right? Let's say the whole world's intelligence, right? The whole world's intelligence, physicists would tell you that. How do we get to this jump to stuff? It's not just intelligence. It's like, it has like a texture and feeling and substance.
Right.
That's what we call ex nihilo. Ex nihilo? Ex nihilo. They will only come into being if you would just take spirituality and constantly filter it lower, lower, lower. You're not going to make an animal. You'll make the spirit of an animal. You'll make we call the face of the ox, the chariot, which is some kind of supernal depiction of an ox. But you're not going to make a physical cow. This is explained elsewhere. Examine it well. So that's it for today.
Wow.
Shabbos. You have your work cut out for you.